Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris making a stop in Wisconsin today as she holds a series of campaign rallies in key swing states with her new running mate.
Both Harris and her vice presidential pick, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, speaking to supporters in Eau Claire, where campaign officials say more than 12,000 people showed up. Chief political reporter Jason Zimmerman was on hand for the event. He's live in Eau Claire with Your Voice, Your Vote coverage. Jason.
Cami, Democrats very excited today, especially after seeing the size of the crowd, which was comparable to many of the rallies being held by Donald Trump all across the country. The campaign says it shows a renewed level of energy not seen prior to Kamala Harris being elevated to the top of the Democratic ticket. This was an outdoor event, and it was hot. A lot of people also drove from Minnesota to support their governor as he took the stage an hour away from his home state, while both Harris and Walz attacked Trump, saying the former president only cares about himself. They also took time to highlight their own agenda, which includes protecting abortion rights. Here's a sample of what was said.
Because we trust women. And when I am President of the United States and when Congress passes a bill to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade, I will sign it into law.
And I'm not a name caller, but what I am as a teacher, I observe things. So I want to tell you what I observed and you've observed about these guys when you see them, that it's a very clear thing. Yes, they are creepy and weird as hell. You see it.
Harris and Walz will continue to campaign in a number of swing states over the next several days, with Michigan being their very next stop. All of this just ahead of the Democratic National Convention set to get underway on August 19th. Reporting live in Eau Claire, Jason Zimmerman, Action 2 News.